It's Bert's first day as a driver for a national delivery company. He was getting burned out in his previous job at the distribution warehouse, so he is excited about this new position that comes with better pay and hours. He's good at reading and understanding the route map for deliveries, especially now that he has new reading glasses, but he finds the GPS alerts distracting. He also feels the stress of learning new responsibilities, and he misses the exercise of walking around and lifting items at the warehouse. Luckily, this new delivery job offers more free time to walk his dog and play softball with friends, and it will provide more opportunities to save for retirement. Bert's even had time in the morning to blend smoothies to take along on his route, which his doctor suggested as part of a healthy diet. Bert finds that focusing on those benefits helps him to adopt a positive mindset and sleep better at night. He is hopeful about navigating other changes to come in this stage of life. Bert has concerns and questions about middle adulthood that many share, including, how does the brain function differently at this life stage than at younger ages? Is it better for life satisfaction to stay in one job or workplace, or to look for new opportunities? Is it true that forgetfulness increases in middle age? How do the changes of middle adulthood affect overall well-being? Massage for taction. How do people at this life stage balance work and leisure? What are the most important benefits of regular exercise, a healthy diet, sleep, and a positive mindset in middle adulthood? In this chapter, you will learn about the changes in physical and cognitive development that occur during middle adulthood, including how those changes impact well-being at this time of life. At 46 years old, quarterback Tom Brady announced his retirement after spending over 20 years as a top player in the NFL. He retired as the #1 quarterback in NFL history. But what is perhaps most amazing about his career is how he continued to develop physically after entering middle adulthood. Tom Brady won 4 of his 7 Super Bowl championships and 3 of his 5 Super Bowl MVP awards after 30 years of age, and actually became a faster athlete in certain measures. Tom credits a healthy daily diet and exercise routine with maintaining physical ability, mental sharpness, and energy well into middle adulthood. Even in retirement, he enjoys many activities, like working out with friends and riding bikes with his children. He is also involved with community service organizations that help those in need, including the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and Best Buddies International. Whereas Tom's physical achievements are by no means typical for his age, his dedication to work, family, personal wellness, and community service is an exceptional example of the developmental benefits of active engagement in middle adulthood. Diardo, 2024, Patra, 2023, Petrie and Knott, 2022. Physical and cognitive changes in middle adulthood tend to be gradual, occurring over many years. The nearly 30-year length of this life stage allows for a wide variety of developmental experiences, both within and between individuals. For example, some adults begin to show gray hair in their 30s, while others don't gray during this stage. These variations make it difficult to generalize about physical development in middle adulthood. Variation in human aging is largely explained by the interaction of our genetics with our experiences. Aging from inevitable and genetically influenced biological changes is known as primary aging. For example, with age, hair follicles naturally reduce their production of pigment, which results in graying hair. On the other hand, secondary aging results from the influence of environmental or behavioral factors, as opposed to genetic influences. For example, many signs of aging skin, such as wrinkles and changes in pigmentation, are caused by sun exposure. Physical aging is an inevitable part of the human life cycle. The timing and experience of the related processes are improved for many adults by increasing healthy behaviors and having a positive mindset. Adults generally often adopt healthier eating behaviors with age. Whitehead, 2016, are less likely to experience mental illness, NIMH 2021, during the period of middle adulthood, compared to other periods of the lifespan. Individuals in middle adulthood also often develop more positive perceptions of aging by prioritizing their emotional and psychological goals. Carstensen and Michels, 2005. Changes in the brain. Although the human brain does not physically grow in adulthood, its functions, like perception, memory, and information processing, continue to evolve. Some aspects stabilize and are indistinguishable from those of early adulthood, such as the ability to make and utilize mental images. Kokola et al., 2013. Researchers have also identified changes in other areas of the brain during middle adulthood, some of which show improved functioning and some of which show decreased functioning. Perception. The brain perceives and responds to emotional stimuli differently in middle adulthood. Findings suggest that compared to younger adults, middle-aged adults pay more attention to and recall positive stimuli, like a smiling infant or cute kittens, and show less amygdala reactivity. Recall that the amygdala is the part of the brain that produces automatic fear and anger responses when exposed to negative images, like a snarling dog or a gruesome injury. Charles et al. 2003, Mather et al. 2004. Figure 13.2. This shift in attention to and processing of positive versus negative emotional information is called the positivity effect and may help promote psychological and emotional well-being. Carstensen 2021, Carstensen and Reynolds 2023. The positivity effect may also boost physical health, since positive affect has been found to predict healthy exercise behaviors in adulthood. Whitehead 2016. Memory and information processing. It is not uncommon to hear adults in middle age comment about becoming forgetful and even seeking out memory assessments. This perceived memory loss is not supported by research, however. No differences in memory are typically found between middle and young adults, and people in these developmental stages seem to generally function at the same level in terms of memory. Salthouse 2012. It is more likely that perceived forgetfulness is a result of the cognitive overload associated with the responsibilities of parenting, looking after aging parents, maintaining a career, and so on. Mayo Clinic Health System 2022. One real change in brain processes in middle adulthood is a slower processing speed than at younger ages. Scientists gauge processing speed by measuring reaction time, such as how quickly a person presses a button on a keyboard when prompted. Adults also have more difficulty filtering distracting stimuli during a task. Cray et al. 2008. Figure 13.3. In the brains of middle-aged adults, more areas of the cortex are activated in response to cognitive tasks than in younger adult brains. Gunter et al. 1998. Kwan et al. 2016. One explanation might be that ideas are being associated with greater memory context in older adults because of their life experience. For example, when shown random images as part of a memory task, middle-aged adults with more life experience might associate those random images with a broader network of personal memories than would a young adult. While this broader network activation may slow processing speed, it also likely enables more complex and nuanced problem-solving abilities. However, reduced processing speed may also be exacerbated by long-term health problems such as diabetes, Tuvison et al. 2013, or chronic pain, Rausch et al. 2021. Brain health. As general health concerns increase in midlife, many people wonder how to maintain brain health and prevent cognitive decline, dementia, or illnesses like Alzheimer's disease. Researchers have investigated the connection between brain health and various lifestyle factors, including diet, dental hygiene, exercise, and social engagement. Some reports suggest moderate amounts of caffeine, 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day, are associated with lower risks of developing dementia. Zhang et al. 2021. However, high rates of caffeine consumption have been associated with increased rates of dementia and reduced hippocampal volume. Pham et al. 2021. Potential benefits or risks of alcohol consumption vary. Moderate amounts, 1 to 2 drinks a day, may reduce dementia risk, whereas large amounts are associated with increased risk compared to non-drinking. Jian et al. 2023. Recommendations about alcohol are complicated by the difficulty in pinpointing the exact level at which consumption becomes dangerous. As a result of this uncertainty, the World Health Organization, WHO, has published a statement that no level of alcohol consumption is deemed safe. WHO 2023, as there is not a clear upper limit for healthy alcohol consumption. The Mediterranean diet, high in fruit, vegetables, grains, and olive oil, and low in red meat and processed foods, has also been associated with protecting healthy brain functioning. In particular, the brains of adults following this eating approach are less likely to exhibit the accumulation of plaques in the brain that lead to cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. Agarwal et al. 2023. Researchers have investigated the connection between oral health and dementia risk. A study of more than 6,000 patient medical records revealed that adults with periodontal disease were more likely to be later diagnosed with dementia. Beydoun et al. 2020. Post-mortem analyses of the brains of deceased individuals with dementia found higher levels of a type of bacteria associated with gingivitis. These bacteria can release an enzyme that damages nerve cells and causes symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Although these results are correlational rather than causal, researchers are examining how proactive oral care and treatments for bacterial infections in the mouth may reduce the risk of dementia. Dominy et al. 2019. Staying or becoming physically active also benefits brain health. Cardiovascular exercise increases blood flow, which promotes the growth of capillary and neural networks in the brain. Konopka, 2015. Physical exercise has been associated with better cognitive function in both naturalistic and experimental settings. Older adults who exercise regularly perform better on tests of cognitive function than those who do not, even when controlling for other health and lifestyle factors. Kumar et al., 2022. Following a stroke, adults who participated in a thorough and progressive fitness program involving strength and aerobic exercises showed greater cognitive performance at a 6-month follow-up than did those in low-intensity fitness programs. Lou Ambrose et al., 2022. Cohen, 2004, proposes that strong social ties may deliver both direct and indirect benefits to adults' health. Social ties buffer against stress, and chronic stress has been found to cause changes in brain chemistry that eventually shrink structures of the brain involved in cognition, such as the hippocampus. Wilner, 2017. Social participation may also encourage engagement in activities that promote brain and cognitive health, including physical and intellectual activity. Cohen, 2004. Changes in sensory abilities. In addition to experiencing changes to how the brain perceives and processes information, people may notice changes in their sensory abilities during middle adulthood. Structural components of the eyes change, hearing acuity declines, and there are subtle changes to the sense of touch. The eyes experience a loss of visual acuity in middle age, which is referred to as presbyopia. Two common issues arise. First, a thickening of the eye's lens reduces its elasticity, making it less likely to bend to accommodate targets closer to the eye. As a result, middle-aged adults often have trouble seeing up close and experience blurriness when reading, as shown in Figure 13.4. A second aspect of presbyopia is the buildup of yellowish extracellular debris that can cause age-related macular degeneration, AMD, a deterioration of the light receptors in the retina. Gross-Nicholas et al., 2013. Difficulty adjusting to changes in light may also cause challenges for night driving. In middle age, the pupil does not dilate or constrict as much in response to bright or dimly lit conditions. Compared to younger adults, drivers in middle adulthood self-report greater difficulty seeing pedestrians at night compared to daytime. Mikoski et al., 2019. Age-related hearing loss is called presbycusis. Over time, the inner ear structures and nerves slowly deteriorate, and initial hearing loss first affects adults' ability to detect high-frequency sound waves. As a result, they may notice an increasing difficulty in hearing high-pitched noises, such as a beeping microwave or dinging cell phone or doorbell. Hearing loss is also exacerbated by cigarette smoking, high blood pressure, and diabetes, by Duke et al., 2023. Hearing loss due to chronic noise exposure is estimated to affect as many as 25% of U.S. adults. National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, 2022. Particularly men who are traditionally more likely to work in professions with high volume noise, such as construction or mining. Hoffman et al., 2017. For example, the second most common disability benefit for U.S. service members, a group where men outnumber women at least 4-to-1, is for hearing loss, with 1.3 million people receiving compensation. Veteran Benefit Administration, 2020. Among veterans receiving disability benefits, hearing loss is topped only by tinnitus, another hearing-related condition caused by exposure to loud noises, which causes the sensation of persistent ringing in the ear. U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, ND. Hearing aids can be beneficial to those experiencing hearing loss. However, only 16% of those who need them use them. The National Council on Aging identified barriers to hearing aid use, including access to and cost of health care in the United States. Everett, 2023. As a result, many adults consider treatment of hearing loss to be a lower priority than other healthcare needs. However, supportive healthcare for hearing loss is crucial to keeping the growing adult population engaged and healthy. Chronic hearing loss can impede work, social engagement, and daily activities. Straining to hear while working, socializing, or accomplishing daily tasks can lead to stress, fatigue, and impaired brain function. Those who do acquire hearing aids are, therefore, less susceptible to cognitive decline and even dementia risk. Yeo et al., 2022. Other sensory capabilities may also decline in middle age. As skin thins and loses elasticity with age, sensitivity to hot and cold decreases. Huang et al., 2010. In middle adulthood, proprioception, the body's sense of location and movement in space, also becomes less acute, making adults more prone to loss of balance, falls, and ankle injuries as they age. Pinto et al. 2020. Body changes. In midlife, adults begin to experience changes to their bodies. These changes may initially be more apparent in external visible areas like the skin. In contrast, internal changes such as reduced bone density may not be readily noticed. Body composition. Body composition changes can often be the most apparent signs of aging. Over time, the middle-aged body loses muscle and adds body fat. Age-related muscle loss is called sarcopenia. After the age of 50 years, adults lose 1 to 2% of muscle each year. Larson et al. 2019, Marcel 2003. Related to both sarcopenia and the increase in body fat is also an increase in obesity among middle-aged adults, which is associated with numerous health issues. Slowing metabolism is commonly associated with weight changes in middle age, and it does bear some of the responsibility. The chemical process by which bodies convert food to energy is metabolism. In middle adulthood, the basic metabolic rate declines, meaning the body now needs less energy when at rest. Poncer et al. 2021. Typical middle-aged bodies for women are not well represented in the media. A recent season of The Golden Bachelor, which focused on older adults' search for love, received criticism for the lack of body diversity among the contestants. Battle 2023. And while adults increasingly focus on how their bodies function, as opposed to how they look, Roy and Payette 2012. Exposure to images of idealistically thin bodies has been found to negatively influence body image, regardless of age. Price et al. 2023. Especially for white women. Roy and Payette 2012. On the other hand, adults with more positive attitudes toward aging and higher self-esteem are more likely to report positive body image. Pierce et al. 2014. Price et al. 2023. Semaglutide hormone therapies are being explored as medical approaches to weight management, particularly for adults at risk for diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Semaglutide acts on the hypothalamus to reduce appetite and food intake, and initial studies have found promising results for patients using these injectable medications to sustain weight loss and lower risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Linkoff et al. 2023, Ryan et al. 2024, Wadden et al. 2021. While drugs that contain semaglutide such as Ozempic and Wegovy were originally developed to treat type 2 diabetes, researchers are exploring their usefulness for weight management. While Wegovy is approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration (FDA) as a method of weight management, Ozempic is still only FDA approved to treat type 2 diabetes and lower the risk of associated cardiovascular disease. FDA 2024. More research is needed to determine the long-term effectiveness against possible side effects and risks of these drugs as medical approaches to adult weight management. Skin. The skin shows noticeable signs of aging, such as wrinkles, age spots, and sagging. The layers of skin lose their elasticity, thickness, and water and fat content, which causes the skin to appear loose or wrinkled. Too much sun exposure without adequate protection, e.g., using sunscreen or wearing a hat, results in secondary aging with sunspots, wrinkling, and increased risk of skin cancer. Wong and Chu 2021, Figure 13.5. Bone density. One important health concern in middle adulthood is decreasing bone density. Bone density reaches a peak in the mid to late 30s and then progressively declines in a process called osteoporosis. Osteoporosis, which can result in more frequent bone fractures and breaks, occurs in those assigned female at birth, AFAB, at twice the rate as it does for those assigned male at birth, AMAB, owing to the reduction of estrogen and progesterone experienced during menopause. The risk of osteoporosis can be reduced through diet and exercise. Increasing calcium consumption starting in early adulthood helps the body to grow and helps strengthen the bones and teeth. However, the body does not produce its own calcium, so this nutrient must be obtained through calcium-rich foods such as dairy products, almonds, dark leafy greens, salmon, and tofu. Vitamin D helps the body to absorb the calcium in these foods. Vitamin D is produced naturally by the body, but can also be supplemented by foods rich in vitamin D, such as fish, eggs, mushrooms, and vitamin D-fortified foods, such as milk and cereal. Bone health can also be promoted through regular participation in strength training exercises, which have been shown to increase bone density in persons AFAB. Kissler-Fischbacher et al., 2021. Nelson et al., 1994. Strength training also helps support balance, metabolism, and cognition. Mayo Clinic, 2023. Strength training does not require weightlifting, but rather weight-bearing exercises. Weight-bearing exercises are those that require the bones and joints of our body to sustain our own body weight and can include yoga, walking, jogging, or climbing stairs. Figure 13.6. It depends. Do professional athletes have to retire before middle adulthood? You earlier read the story of athlete Tom Brady, who retired from professional football at 46 years of age. While in most major professional sports, athletes retire before age 30, RBC Wealth Management, 2024. Some notable individuals continue achieving in their 30s, 40s, and even 50s. Serena Williams won the 2017 Australian Open at the age of 35 years, while 8 weeks pregnant. The oldest woman athlete at the 2022 Winter Olympics was Germany's Claudia Pechstein, a speed skater who placed 9th just 3 days before her 50th birthday. Japanese soccer player Kazuyoshi Miura plays for Yokohama FC at the age of 57 years. While these individuals are all notable, several subtle changes occur physically that can make continued athletic achievements like these difficult after early adulthood. Reaction times in middle adulthood are slower than in young adulthood. Changes of even 0.1 milliseconds can be enough to affect performance in many reactionary or responsive sports, like reacting to a serve in tennis. The changes in metabolism and body composition require adjustments to training and diet to maintain a fitness level appropriate for competing with athletes who are at their optimal younger age. Athletes who continue playing in middle age maintain careful diets and engage in increased strength work to maintain muscle and bone mass. 56-year-old Patricia considers herself to be in a happy long-term partnership. Even though sex is less frequent, there is more focus on emotional intimacy, and she is still very satisfied with her sex life. The couple's physical relationship is nurturing, with lots of affection, and sex is more meaningful because it is built on shared experiences, respect and acceptance of one another, and knowledge of what each enjoys and dislikes. Overall, Patricia would describe their sexual relationship as loving and complete. As middle adulthood progresses, people experience changes in their reproductive ability, as well as in their sexual behavior and attitudes. The median age of first birth in the United States is now 30 years old, so middle adulthood may include the experience of pregnancy for many. Toward the latter half of middle adulthood, the ability to reproduce declines and then is lost altogether during the life stage known as the climacteric. The associated hormonal transitions can result in a variety of physical changes, along with changes to cognition, emotion, and sexual experiences. Most individuals continue to engage in sex throughout middle adulthood, experiencing several physical and cognitive benefits. Female reproductive changes. The female reproductive system undergoes several significant changes over the 30-year span of middle adulthood. During this stage of life, women typically experience 2 childbirths, with the associated physical changes, though 15% of women 45 to 50 years old have not had biological children. Korhonen, 2023, Schaefer and Aragao, 2023. Between the ages of 40 and 60 years, the female reproductive system begins to experience changes leading to menopause. Changes resulting from pregnancy. Estrogen and progesterone hormones are produced at their highest rate during pregnancy and are responsible for many changes. For example, females may experience sensation changes to taste, e.g., a greater tolerance for some tastes and a decreased ability to taste, a higher sensitivity to smells, and temporary changes to vision and pressure in the eyes. Body temperature rises slightly during pregnancy, which increases risk of heat stress and dehydration. Physical changes during pregnancy include growth and tenderness of the breasts as milk production begins. The increase in progesterone also influences a relaxing of ligaments and joints. As a result, many pregnant people will notice they have a flatter arch and longer, wider feet. Segal et al., 2013, and may move to a larger shoe size or more flexibly fitting footwear. Stretch marks may also appear on the skin of the abdomen and breasts, as well as the thighs. These skin changes will typically fade over time. Exercise during pregnancy is recommended for most pregnant persons. According to the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, those accustomed to rigorous exercise prior to pregnancy can continue to engage in those activities. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 2018. Those who were not exercising prior to pregnancy are generally encouraged to start with moderate activities, such as walking or water aerobics, for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Pregnancy-induced changes continue into the postpartum period and beyond. Medical professionals typically recommended that people who have given birth avoid sex for 6 weeks because the cervix, which has contracted and expanded during birth, needs to heal, During pregnancy and breastfeeding, structures inside the breast swell to support lactation, but shrink when no longer needed. This may result in a smaller breast size. Khan and Sajjad, 2023. Connective tissue in pregnant people's bodies becomes more flexible in order to support body shape changes needed for pregnancy and childbirth, and this loosening of connective structures may lead to long-term changes in shape and function of structures throughout the body, including larger feet with lower arches. Alcahuz-Grignan et al., 2021. Increased finger joint flexibility. Afshar and Tabrizi, 2021. Wider hips, Marino et al., 2019. Looser skin, and a drop in the pelvic floor muscles. Changes to the pelvic floor muscles can sometimes cause discomfort during sex as well as incontinence, difficulty controlling urination, especially when jumping or sneezing. Pelvic floor muscles can be gradually strengthened and supported over time by practicing pelvic muscle exercises and learning to conduct everyday physical activities like lifting children, using proper posture, muscle engagement, and even breathing. Nowogrodsky, 2019. Menopause. The climacteric results in menopause, the end of the menstrual cycle. Menopause may occur anywhere between 40 and 60 years of age and consists of 3 phases: premenopause, perimenopause, and postmenopause. During the premenopausal phase, females begin to experience irregular menstrual cycles due to fluctuations in estrogen. Figure 13.7. In the perimenopausal phase, even greater variations in menstrual cycles can occur. This phase is often associated with unexpected sensations of feeling hot and increased perspiration, among numerous physical symptoms, commonly referred to as hot flashes. These changes leading up to menopause can occur gradually over 8 to 10 years. The postmenstrual phase occurs as estrogen and progesterone levels continue to drop, and menstruation has ceased for 1 year. Menopausal changes in hormone levels bring other physical changes beyond the loss of reproductive ability. For example, estrogen helps maintain bone mass, so the drop in estrogen puts women at increased risk of osteoporosis and subsequent skeletal injuries, such as bone fractures. G and U, 2015, figure 13.8. In general, menopause does not cause severe psychological symptoms, though research indicates that Black women in the United States are at greater risk of experiencing menopausal symptoms earlier and to a greater extent than white women because of social disadvantages and disparate treatment. Harlow et al., 2022. Some women report brain fog and issues with memory, and research indicates that estrogen may protect neural health. Goldstein, 2021. Menopause is also associated with a decrease in volume of some areas of the cortex, even when age is controlled for. Schellbaum et al., 2021. However, many reported cognitive concerns can also be attributed to disruption of sleep due to hot flashes and the general stress of middle adulthood. In the postmenopausal phase, cognitive abilities return to a level more consistent with that prior to menopause. Schellbaum et al., 2021. The physical and psychological experience of menopause varies individually and cross-culturally. According to research by Hall and colleagues, 2007, while most persons AFAB in the United States report experiencing hot flashes during menopause, hot flashes are reported less frequently by females in many Asian countries. Persons AFAB living in modern cultures removed from traditional cultural practices often characterize the transition in terms of discomfort or embarrassment, anxiety, loss of control, and loss of youth, and many see it as a disorder that requires treatment. Persons AFAB in more traditional cultures are more likely to welcome an increase in wisdom, relief from the responsibility to bear and raise children, and the opportunity to mentor others and start a new chapter of life. Societal influences on perceptions of menopause shape different responses to and management of menopause, including self-care practices such as using cold compresses and controlled breathing, using herbal remedies, seeking out role models and education, acknowledging menopause as a rite of passage and attainment of privilege, and adopting a positive, forward-looking mindset. Hall et al., 2007. It depends. Evaluating hormone replacement therapy. In the 1990s, hormone replacement therapy, HRT, consisting of doses of estrogens and progestin, was often prescribed to women to offset symptoms of menopause and reduce the risk of osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease. While observed increases in breast cancer and uterine cancer were associated with long-term high-dosage use, overall mortality was predicted to decrease as a result of the reduced rate of cardiovascular disease. Ross et al., 1989. So it was still recommended that HRT should be offered to all postmenopausal women who did not have pre-existing risk factors, such as a history of breast cancer. McKeon, 1994. However, In 2002, longitudinal clinical trials conducted by the Women's Health Initiative, WHI, on the long-term effects of HRT were stopped prematurely based on results indicating that the risks of breast cancer and CVD were too great for study participants. This drastic action created panic among many patients and doctors, and HRT was no longer considered an advisable treatment. Tormey et al., 2006. However, criticisms of the design of the study, such as that it included women much older than would typically be prescribed HRT, have led some to reconsider the rejection of HRT. Cagnacci and Vanier, 2019. Reanalysis of the original WHI data, Manson et al., 2013, and new clinical trials, Scheerbeck et al., 2012, that studied outcomes of HRT by age found that if prescribed within 10 years of the onset of menopausal symptoms, the treatment was associated with menopausal symptom relief and a decreased risk of CVD and death. So what now? The best advice seems to be to talk with your doctor. Dr. Barb Dupree, a gynecologist with 30 years of experience, recommends treatment for menopausal symptoms needs to be customized for each woman, given her risk factors, symptoms, and preferences. Dupree, 2019. Male reproductive changes. Like women, men are also more likely to have children after age 30 years. At that same age, however, the fertility of the male reproductive system begins to decline, with a decrease in testicular size and sperm quality beginning in middle adulthood. Vaughn et al., 2020. Well et al., 2007. Zhu et al., 2011. The climacteric is a more gradual process in males than in females. Several changes occur in the male reproductive system that make reproduction less likely, but not impossible. Around age 40 to 45 years, sperm cell production decreases. Ejaculated semen is lower in overall volume and contains a lower percentage of reproductively viable sperm cells. These changes may occur in large part because around the age of 40 years, males experience a 1% drop per year in testosterone production, figure 13.9. This hormonal decrease is also associated with loss of muscle mass and strength, increased fatigue, and increased risk of osteoporosis. Rajfer, 2003, Singh, 2013. There has been a rise in the use of testosterone replacement therapy to treat reduced testosterone production in adult males, though its use is not without controversy. Some studies show health benefits such as improved mood and bone density. Snyder et al., 2018, while others suggest health concerns such as increased risk of stroke. Liu et al., 2017. One of the most common afflictions in middle adulthood is erectile dysfunction, ED, the inability to achieve or maintain an erection. Roughly 31% of men between ages 57 and 64 years have ED. Castleman, 2017. Predictors include physical factors like low testosterone and obesity, as well as a host of health-related factors like diabetes and hypertension, and psychological aspects such as depression. Erectile dysfunction is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease and dementia. Kessler et al., 2019. The most common treatment is the use of vasodilator medications, such as Viagra and Cialis. Originally designed to control hypertension, these drugs increase blood flow to the penis. Pelvic floor exercises have also been demonstrated to be an effective therapy for ED. Dory et al., 2004. Yakov et al., 2022. Changes in sexual activity. In middle adulthood, individuals generally remain sexually active, despite declines in frequency of sexual activity. Changes in marital status due to divorce or widowhood, as well as time demands from children and jobs, may reduce opportunities for sexual activity. Poorer physical health, rather than reproductive changes, also predicts a reduction in sexual activity. Carricker et al., 2011. AARP surveys how middle-aged, aged 45 to 59 years, and older, aged 60-plus years, adults value and engage in sex. Fisher et al., 2010. Midlife adults place more value on sex than older adults, though many see it as less important as they age. Through midlife, men tend to think about and be more interested in sex than women. 33% of men and 23% of women surveyed reported having sex at least once a week. Another important finding in AARP's research is that, for middle-aged women, the quality of the relationship with their sexual partner influences the regularity of sexual activity and the positivity of life satisfaction. When asked what they enjoy most about sex in middle adulthood, adults, and especially women, cited their psychological and romantic connection to their sexual partners, including emotional intimacy, comfort, communication, quality time, and affection. Flanagan, 2023. Koch and Mansfield, 2007. Lodge and Umberson, 2012. Figure 13.10. Continued sexual activity is associated with increased psychological and cognitive health, including reduced risk of depression, and those who are healthy and active report enjoying their sex life more. Fisher et al., 2010. Jackson et al., 2019. The association between sexual activity and well-being is likely a bidirectional influence. Depression or poor health may cause a person to withdraw from social connections and avoid physical activity, including sexual intimacy. On the other hand, experiencing sexual intimacy may increase an adult's feelings of belongingness and relational intimacy, which may boost mood and protect against depression. Research also finds positive correlations between sexual activity and cognitive functions and memory. Wright et al., 2019. Even when controlling for other variables such as age, education, loneliness, and physical health. Researchers have speculated that the release of neurotransmitters such as dopamine and oxytocin in response to sexual activity may enhance cognitive activity. Wright and Jenks, 2016. Charlie was only 22 years old when they began graduate studies in science. They spent 5 years earning a PhD in biology and decades afterward teaching, conducting research, attending conferences, and reading the published work of others. It was not until age 50 years that they won an international prize for their groundbreaking work on the effects of climate change. Charlie's research has spurred important discussion and debate, and their innovative ideas were founded on years of varied experiences in the classroom, lab, and in the field. Charlie's intellectual success demonstrates how the journey of adulthood allows us to observe, learn, make connections, and build the wisdom that allows midlife adults to produce important intellectual contributions to science, art, and everyday life. Overall, cognition seems to reach a pinnacle in early adulthood, but changes in cognition in middle age appear to bring some advantages, including the development of expertise and improved creativity. In this section, you'll review how changes in adult memory, problem-solving, and intelligence facilitate continued cognitive growth in middle adulthood. Formal and post-formal thought. According to Piaget's theory of cognitive development, the final stage of cognition is formal operational thought, characterized by the capacity for hypothetical, deductive, and abstract thinking. It emerges in adolescence and continues throughout adulthood, though Piaget himself and others have argued that demonstration of some aspects of formal operational thinking is not universal among adults and may be most evident in an adult's area of expertise. Kuhn, 2008. Piaget, 1972. Other researchers have argued that some adults develop beyond formal operational thinking to a stage known as post-formal thought. Perry, 1968. In post-formal thought, the intuitive thinking that comes from experience is combined with the logic of formal operations to produce a cognitive style known as relativism. It is recognized in relativism that some problems or dilemmas may have more than one viable solution depending on a person's perspective and priorities. The differences in cognition between formal and post-formal thought are subject to debate, and the evidence is unclear as to whether this style of thinking qualifies as a more advanced stage and whether it is typical of adult thinking. Blanchard Fields, 2001. Whatever the case, changes in cognition that occur in middle adulthood are best understood as changes in the way individuals perceive and process information, rather than as overall advancements or declines. It is possible that the use of relativistic thinking is, in fact, an outcome of the experiences and wisdom accumulated from the lived experience of adults over the lifespan. Memory and problem solving. Perhaps the most noted research in the understanding of cognition over the course of adulthood is the Seattle Longitudinal Study. The study was initiated by K. Warner Shea in 1956, and since that time, it has assessed the psychological and cognitive development of 6,000 adults, with ages ranging from 22 to over 100 years old. Seattle Longitudinal Study 2024. The longitudinal nature of this study provides a great advantage over the previous cross-sectional studies in understanding individual changes in cognitive development, because cross-sectional approaches were confounded by generational differences known as cohort effects. The results from the Seattle Longitudinal Study provide insight into changes in adult cognition as people age. The longitudinal study found that different types of memory and cognitive processes exhibit different trajectories with age. Verbal and semantic memory, long-term recall of words or concepts, remain consistent and even somewhat increase until the end of middle adulthood. Hedden and Gabrielli, 2004. Park et al., 2002. Shai, 1996. Working memory, the ability to process new and previously encoded information during short-term cognitive tasks, becomes somewhat less efficient as processing speed and short-term storage capacity peak in young adulthood and gradually decline as we age. Park et al., 2002. Rhodes et al., 2019. Shai, 2003. However, effective memory strategies and engaging in physical exercise can improve working memory ability in middle adulthood. Herzog et al., 2019. Leo and Lockman, 2019. Practical problem solving on everyday tasks, such as purchasing goods or figuring out a bus schedule, shows improvement in middle adulthood, largely from accumulated experience. Chen et al., 2017. Another advantage of middle adulthood is the development of expertise over the course of many years in a career or field of interest. Through continued deliberate practice and engagement, experts in a field can use automatic processing, better strategies, and more creativity in problem solving for their domain of experience. Erickson, 2020. A model of physical and cognitive aging proposed by Nancy Denny suggests that the development of physical abilities and the development of cognitive abilities both follow a similar pattern, with an early adulthood peak and gradual decline. Denny, 1984. Individuals can influence their own peaks by prioritizing the practice of particular skills. Those skills that are not practiced and that therefore peak at lower levels will decline sooner during the aging process. For example, more time spent in formal education results in higher cognitive functions in middle adulthood. Loveton et al., 2020. As you find in Chapter 15, Physical and Cognitive Development in Late Adulthood, age 60 and beyond, diagnosis of cognitive declines is based on comparing individual performance to a universal average, and thus those with higher peaks will take longer to decline to a level at which a diagnosis of cognitive impairment may be made. It depends. Brain games. You may have seen advertisements about games that claim to increase cognitive functions and reduce the chances of having Alzheimer's disease. These products often include puzzles, riddles, and memory games. Regular practice of cognitive skills helps advance cognitive abilities and promotes the attainment of higher developmental peaks. Research thus far in cognitive skills training for reduction in cognitive decline is promising but inconclusive. It appears that engaging in games, crafts, and social activity is associated with reduced incidence of cognitive impairment. Krell-Rausch et al., 2017. Preventing Alzheimer's with Cognitive Training, PA-SACT, is a clinical trial studying whether there may be a causal link with computerized cognitive training and the reduction of cognitive impairment. Nicholson et al., 2022. In the meantime, the Alzheimer's Society of Canada encourages adults to cross-train your brain with a variety of activities, such as playing chess or Sudoku, learning a new language, and even playing video games to promote cognitive flexibility. Alzheimer's Society of Canada, ND. Intelligence and wisdom. Psychologists have conceptualized intelligence through a variety of theories that are useful in framing how the development of intelligence may vary, depending on how it is defined and measured. As discussed in 7.3 Intelligence in Middle Childhood, Robert Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence proposes that intelligence can be divided into three abilities: analytical, creative, and practical. Sternberg argued that while each of these intellectual components allows people to adapt to changing life demands and circumstances, how they are applied and the priority that they have in our lives will change with age. Berg and Sternberg, 1985. For example, analytical intelligence uses academic knowledge and computation, which can be applied in middle adulthood within a given career or field of interest. Practical intelligence is needed for solving everyday challenges, and as research has shown, adults exhibit improvement in this type of problem solving as a result of lived experience. Chen et al., 2017. The innovative problem solving that belies creative intelligence is often built on existing expertise in a given area. And as you have learned, adults continue to increase their semantic memory and expertise throughout middle adulthood. The value of accumulated knowledge or wisdom in supporting the triarchic domains of intelligence may remind you of Raymond Cattell's theory of intelligence, also introduced in 7.3 Intelligence in Middle Childhood. Sternberg and colleagues agree and assert that their theory of how intelligence develops in adulthood is certainly compatible with that of Cattell. Berg and Sternberg, 1985. Cattell's theory of intelligence suggests two primary components of intelligence. Crystallized intelligence consists of accumulated abilities in long-term memory, such as knowledge and vocabulary. Because crystallized intelligence is developed through experience, it exhibits continuous and steady increases throughout the lifespan. Fluid intelligence, which is the ability to reason and solve novel and abstract problems, peaks in early adulthood, remains relatively steady in the middle adult years, and declines as individuals enter older adulthood. Figure 13.11. There are also generational changes in performance on intelligence tests, known as the Flynn effect. The Flynn effect occurs when newer generations perform better on intelligence tests than previous generations. This doesn't mean, however, that younger generations are more intelligent than their older counterparts. According to James Flynn, who discovered the phenomenon, explanations include improved access to nutrition and education over time that promote physical and cognitive growth and well-being. Flynn et al., 2012. Cultural context influences how people think about and apply intellectual abilities. Benson, 2003, Warren, 2020. While Western cultures often perceive intelligence as an analytical skill that helps us to categorize concepts and form arguments, East Asian cultures are more likely to emphasize the interpersonal implications of intelligence and how it helps us to effectively interact with others. Nisbet, 2004. Yang and Sternberg, 1997.1. Different cultures have also been found to vary in the extent to which they foster and value practical, as opposed to academic, intelligence. Sternberg et al., 2001. Wisdom is frequently associated with age, and like many cognitive abilities, it develops over time. Like intelligence, conceptions of wisdom may vary cross-culturally, but wisdom is broadly defined by the German psychologist Paul Baltus as expert knowledge concerning the fundamental pragmatics of life, a description that incorporates aspects of self-understanding, knowledge, pro-social values, and openness. Bangin et al., 2013. Wisdom can be measured using performance or self-report measurements. Performance measures, such as the Berlin Wisdom Paradigm developed by Baltus and Staudinger, 2000, ask respondents to advise fictional characters faced with life decisions. For example, in reflecting over their life, people sometimes realize that they have not achieved what they had once wanted to achieve. What could a person consider and do in such a situation? The participant's level of wisdom is then evaluated based on their response. Self-report measurements, such as the Brief Wisdom Screening Scale, Gluck et al., 2013, ask respondents to indicate how much they agree with statements such as, "I can accept the impermanence of things," or "I have grown as a result of the losses I have suffered." Research findings about aging and wisdom are complicated. Many aspects of the trait are only marginally predicted by age, if at all. Dong et al., 2023. Across findings, it seems wisdom is less about age and more closely related to applying life experience to difficult life problems or social issues. Figure 13.12. Even personality factors like openness and creativity come into play, though perceptions of the traits associated with wisdom vary cross-culturally. In Western cultures, such as America and Australia, traits such as experienced and knowledgeable are most closely associated with wisdom. In Eastern cultures, such as India and Japan, wisdom is more closely associated with the social skill of discretion. Takahashi and Bordia, 2000.2. Creativity. While young creative minds may be more popularly visible in some domains, such as music and media, people often reach greater moments of creativity in middle age and beyond. A study of famous painters from the 19th and 20th centuries found that these artists typically created their most valuable paintings when they were 42 years old. Francis, 2013. Creativity is often thought of as only an artistic quality, but it is derived from cognitive abilities that can be applied in several domains, including science. In fact, an examination of scientists who won the Nobel Prize for scientific breakthroughs found that since the year 2000, most prize-winning physicists and chemists were well into middle adulthood when they made their discoveries, with physicists being 48 years old on average. Jones and Weinberg, 2011. As we age, we learn what works best for each of our own creative processes, allowing us to maximize individual creativity. Creativity can be generated by both divergent and convergent thinking. Divergent thinking allows us to develop many solutions to a problem when there is no clear solution. Guilford, 1967. This can mean applying the abilities of fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. If you had to come up with all the things you might do with a traditional red brick, for example, you produce many ideas. Fluency, a wide variety of ideas. Flexibility, unusual ideas, originality, and add complex details to your ideas. Elaboration. Figure 13.13. Convergent thinking is the creative ability to determine a best solution to produce a desired outcome. In the tale of the three little pigs who each construct a house to keep safe from the big bad wolf, the pig who chooses to build his house from bricks and not straw or sticks demonstrates convergent thinking. Carson remembers her 20s well. She was proving herself in a stressful job and frequently grabbed a quick and not necessarily healthy meal to eat at her desk while working late. She would leave the office around 7 or 8 p.m., meet up with friends at a local hangout, sleep for 5 or 6 hours, and wake up to do the same the next day. Fast forward 20 years, and Carson is a 45-year-old mother of 2 school-aged children and is also looking after older parents who have age-related health issues. She and her spouse are not close to retirement, but they enjoy thinking about the trips they'll take together someday when they have more time and freedom. She wants to be there and be healthy on those trips, and she wants to live as long as possible to enjoy future generations of her family. She knows she needs to make some lifestyle changes to make that more likely. Around age 40 years, many individuals become more aware of aging and longevity, as has occurred with Carson. Healthcare providers add more tests at routine checkups, and while mortality in middle age isn't common, most people know someone who died younger than expected. As individuals enter this life stage, they begin to think more about what constitutes a healthy lifestyle and how to achieve their health goals. Health concerns in middle adulthood. Until middle adulthood, the leading cause of death is unintentional injury due to accidents. However, between the ages of 35 and 64 years, the leading cause of death shifts from accidents to health-specific issues like cancers and heart disease. Figure 13.14, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, NDA. Learning how cancer, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic and endocrine disorders become health issues to monitor in middle adulthood can help you make choices that promote healthy living and support an enriching life. Cancer. Cancers form when the body's normal elimination of old cells is disrupted, and damaged cells continue to reproduce. Numerous risk factors are associated with the development of cancers, including genetics, lifestyle, and environmental influences. However, the most significant risk factor for cancer is aging, as shown in Figure 13.15. The 10 most diagnosed cancers in the United States have an average age of diagnosis of 60 years or older. The average age of all cancer diagnoses is 66 years. National Cancer Institute, 2021. In 2020, the National Cancer Institute, NCI, identified the increasing incidence of certain early-onset cancers, defined as those diagnosed at age 50 years or younger, as an emerging research priority. In particular, the NCI wants to know why certain cancers, such as breast cancer, colorectal cancer, thyroid cancer, and pancreatic cancer, are occurring increasingly earlier in life, and to develop better procedures for early detection, NCI 2020. Some of these cancers may not be increasing in occurrence, but rather are being detected and diagnosed earlier due to an increase in screening. However, researchers are also investigating whether people are being exposed to more risk factors early in life. Early correlational research has identified alcohol use, antibiotics, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, low sleep quality, smoking, diabetes, and a diet high in saturated fats, red meat, sugar, and processed foods as possible risk factors. However, more experimental research is needed to draw conclusions about cause and effect. Ugai et al., 2022. Additionally, research into cultural differences shows that the absence of education and limited access to screening tools such as mammography, breast self-examination, and inconsistent health care can contribute to the early onset of some cancers. For instance, Badger and colleagues, 2018, found that Lebanese women aged 40 to 49 years were more likely to develop more aggressive forms of breast cancer at younger ages compared to women in Western and Middle Eastern countries, but were less aware of the availability and preventative value of breast cancer screening. Point 3. Life hacks. Cancer prevention. Cancer can happen to anyone, regardless of age, and it can be caused entirely by factors outside an individual's control, such as biological aging, genetic predisposition, and environmental contaminants. However, based on studies of modifiable risk factors, meaning those over which an individual has some control, scientists and doctors make several recommendations to reduce cancer risk, NCI 2023. Here are a few of these recommendations. Quit smoking or don't smoke. Cigarette smoking is the leading cause of preventable disease and death in the United States and accounts for 30% of all cancer deaths. Smoking is most common among midlife adults and is higher among those with low education and low income. CDC 2023a. Ask your doctor about vaccines that prevent viruses associated with cancer, including the human papillomavirus (HPV) vaccine, which reduces risk of cancers of the cervix, penis, vagina, and anus, and the hepatitis B vaccine, which reduces risk of liver cancer. Adopt healthy dietary and drinking habits. Eating a low-fat, high-fiber diet reduces the risk of colorectal cancer. Decreasing alcohol consumption lowers the risk of various cancers, including oral and esophageal cancers. Cardiovascular disease. While cardiovascular disease, CVD, is not random, it can often be unexpected. Among the contributing factors is hypertension, or high blood pressure, which occurs when the blood pushes against the artery walls with high force. Another factor that increases risk of CVD is high cholesterol. Figure 13.16. Cholesterol is a component of cell membranes made up of proteins and fats. High-density lipoprotein, HDL, is considered good cholesterol and cycles through the blood and liver. Low-density lipoprotein, LDL, is considered problematic because, if present in high amounts, it will stick to the lining of blood vessels. This buildup hardens the walls of the arteries and increases CVD and stroke risk. High levels of triglycerides, which are fats that can build up as plaque in the arteries, also increase the risk of heart disease. Kerfman, 2019. Men and women have different experiences with CVD. Men have more overall occurrences of and fatalities from CVD. However, following a heart attack, women typically remain in the hospital longer than men and are more likely than men to be readmitted to the hospital for heart-related symptoms within the year following an initial heart attack. American College of Cardiology, 2023. Bosworth et al., 2000. Suman et al., 2023. Heart attack symptoms also vary between men and women, as shown in Figure 13.17. Men's symptoms include chest pain, lightheadedness, stomach pain, and shortness of breath. Women's symptoms include back and neck pain, anxiety, dizziness, and shortness of breath. Catella, 2023. Unintentional injuries. Unintentional fatal injuries are most often caused by accidental poisoning/drug overdoses, motor vehicle accidents, drowning, and falls. The leading cause of drug overdose deaths is from opioids, used either illegally or through prescription overuse or misuse. CDC 2024a. Fatality risk for opioid overdose is highest between ages 40 and 50 years. Didike et al., 2024. While the rate of opioid fatalities is on the rise, this alarming trend can be addressed through more careful monitoring of prescribed opioids and treatment for opioid dependence. CDC 2024a. The number of motor vehicle crash deaths has decreased substantially in the last several decades, due, in part, to the increased use of seatbelts by drivers and passengers. Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, 2024. Body weight and diabetes. Body mass index, BMI, is a height for weight measurement calculated by dividing a person's weight by their height. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, if the resulting BMI is 30 or higher, the person has obesity. WHO, 2021. The rate of obesity increases in middle age, given age-related loss of muscle to fat, and a typically slower metabolic rate. In the United States, 44% of adults 40 to 59 years of age are obese, with rates somewhat higher among Black adults, 49%, and lowest among Asian adults, 16%. CDC 2024b. That said, BMI alone is considered an imperfect measure of general health. It is best interpreted in the context of other individual health indexes, as well as a person's gender, age, race, and ethnicity. Berg, 2023. Obesity is generally associated with an increased risk of high blood pressure. Obesity is also associated with a higher risk of cancer. American Cancer Society, 2023, and insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone that helps the body convert blood sugar into energy, thereby regulating blood sugar levels. If body cells become resistant or unresponsive to insulin, chronic high blood sugar may result. Metabolic syndrome is a related condition in which obesity and insulin resistance interact to increase risks of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. Diabetes is an easily diagnosable chronic condition in which the pancreas fails to produce enough insulin to break down sugar in the bloodstream. Type 2 diabetes is known as adult-onset diabetes, and risk factors include family history, age, weight, and sedentariness. The risk of fatality from diabetes increases with age. In 2020, more than 500,000 middle-aged adults died from complications of diabetes, CDC 2024E, and the disease disproportionately affects minority groups, CDC NDB. The chronic nature of poorly regulated diabetes causes complications such as kidney failure, retinopathy, and neuropathy, nerve damage, particularly in the legs and feet. Type 2 diabetes can be managed in the long term through a combination of a low-sugar diet, regular exercise, and prescribed medications to control blood glucose levels. Warning signs that precede the onset of type 2 diabetes can provide opportunities for prevention. Prediabetes is a condition in which the blood sugar level is higher than normal but not high enough to be considered type 2 diabetes. More than 1/3 of all U.S. adults are prediabetic, but most do not know it. Early detection of prediabetes is important because a doctor-recommended change to diet, exercise, and weight management can prevent the progression to type 2 diabetes, CDC 2024D. Stress. Midlife is full of stressors, such as career responsibilities, the demands of raising children, aging parents who might need assistance, and financial responsibilities like rent or mortgages, car loans and credit card debts, and the desire to save for personal retirement or children's future needs. Stress is also a risk factor for CVD. In the 1950s, cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman proposed a link between CVD and the way stress is conveyed in personality, 1959. The personality types they proposed were based on individual differences in the experience of stress. Type A individuals were said to be ambitious, competitive, driven, and more easily alarmed, traits deemed more predictive of CVD than the relaxed and patient qualities of Type B individuals. Later work also proposed Type C, passive people pleasers, Rymarchik et al., 2020, and Type D, those with greater degrees of anger and hostility, Denelay, 1997, Odell et al., 2011. Of all the characteristics, higher hostility appears to be the strongest predictor of CVD. To help conceptualize how stressors influence overall physical health, researchers have come to use the concept of allostatic load, figure 13.18. The allostatic load is the cumulative health toll of stressors, including the body's biological response, activation of the sympathetic nervous system, and release of stress response neurotransmitters and hormones, as well as secondary health impacts, such as changes in sleep, diet, and substance use patterns. Guidi et al., 2020, McEwen and Seaman, 1999. Allostatic load is often used as a biological indicator of physiological dysregulation due to cumulative wear and tear from chronic stress. High allostatic load is associated with aging effects, such as earlier cognitive declines. D'Amico et al., 2020, Lennart Bugla et al., 2022, Seaman et al., 1997, and increased mortality, Parker et al., 2022. Specifically, in a recent meta-analytic review, researchers found a 22% increased overall mortality risk. They also found a 31% increased mortality risk associated with cardiovascular disease, Parker et al., 2022. Adults who experience chronic inequality, particularly people of color, women, and those living in poverty, are more likely to report experiencing upsetting stressors in a variety of domains, including finances, work, relationships, and health. Wang et al., 2023. Furthermore, middle-aged adults with depression who experience higher allostatic load were at greater risk of cognitive decline, Perlman et al., 2022. Those with intersectional identities are at greatest risk of accumulating a higher allostatic load and the associated aging effects through a process that Geronimus and colleagues 2006 described as weathering. Intersectional identities is a term used to describe individuals who might experience multiple, marginalized identities. For example, when the weathering hypothesis was first introduced, it was used to describe the way health declines may impact African American women earlier than non-Hispanic white women due to the cumulative risks associated with experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage. Geronimus, 1992. Current research continues to find evidence of the weathering hypothesis in groups who experience social or economic disadvantage. Forda et al., 2019. Well-being in middle adulthood. Living a healthy and satisfying lifestyle is important at all ages of life, but it is sometimes easier said than done. Many adults struggle to start and maintain healthy habits as they juggle daily and significant life stressors in midlife. Social support, stress management, and healthy approaches to diet, activity, and sleep can all support well-being, social support, and engagement. According to the Stress Buffering Effects Model, Castillo, 2016, social support can protect adults from stress in 3 ways. When we feel supported by others, we are less likely to perceive situations as stressful. Social support reduces our body's physiological response to stress. Others can provide us with resources for coping with stress. Therefore, social support protects mental and physical well-being from the direct and indirect effects of stress. Figure 13.19. For women, social support has been found in some studies to be a better predictor of life satisfaction, wellness, and achievement of health goals than behaviors such as exercising or abstaining from smoking. Denton et al., 2004. Moreno-Murcia et al., 2017. And although received social support gradually decreases during middle adulthood, middle-aged and older adults may not desire or need as much as when they were younger. In fact, too much perceived support may interfere with adults' sense of mastery and contribute to them feeling useless or burdensome. Hill et al., 2023. Participation in social activities is associated with better cognitive function, James et al., 2011, but differs by age and race. Even though younger and middle-aged adults spend more hours outside the home, older adults are 5 times more likely than their younger counterparts to participate in social clubs and organizations, most likely because they have more free time given reduced professional and caregiving responsibilities. Regardless, social integration, whether measured by hours outside the house or social activity participation, is predictive of global health throughout all stages of adulthood. Cherry et al., 2013. In fact, middle-aged adults may not need to go far to benefit from social engagement. Among both younger and middle-aged adults, positive exchanges with their spouse had a greater effect on lowering symptoms of depression than did positive social exchanges with other relatives and friends. Kahn and Aftab, 2013. Okun and Keith, 1998. Race is also a predictor of differences in types of social engagement and their effects on well-being. While Black and white adults over age 55 years report equivalent social network size and perceived social support, Black adults engage in less social activity than their white counterparts. Hamlin et al., 2022. Point 4. While lower social participation is not associated with decreased cognitive function for Black adults, perceived social support in middle adulthood predicts lowered depression and increased optimism for Black women. Sewell et al., 2014. Stress management. While middle adulthood might be one of the busiest times of life regarding what Erickson termed generative pursuits, such as caregiving, leadership, and mentoring, recent research suggests a certain amount of stress is both normative and potentially beneficial. In a study of adults aged 25 to 75 years, only 10% of participants reported no daily stress. Those adults were more likely to be older, unmarried, unemployed men. And while their apparently stress-free lives were associated with higher emotional well-being and fewer health problems, they also exhibited lower cognitive functioning and were less likely to give or receive emotional support. In other words, they were less likely to participate in and experience many of the benefits of midlife generativity. Charles et al., 2021. So how do adults make the most of the inherent stress of midlife? Crum and colleagues, 2023, suggest considering the perspective of Shakespeare's Hamlet. For there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. In other words, your mindset about your life experiences shapes the effects those experiences have on you. Mindset refers to the assumptions and beliefs that guide our expectations and perceptions. To test this assertion, researchers trained employees of a Fortune 500 company to adopt a stress-as-enhancing mindset. Crum et al., 2017. The training included education about the benefits and risks of stress, the role of mindset in coping with stress, and strategies for controlling mindset to mitigate stress. At a 1-month follow-up, these employees were more likely to perceive their stress as having potential benefits and to report better physical health and interpersonal interactions at work, compared to a control group. Lowered stress and increased well-being are also related to other health-connected behaviors such as diet, exercise, sleep, and even sexual activity. Dasgupta, 2018. Diet and nutrition. A healthy diet is linked to various beneficial health outcomes. As noted earlier, the Mediterranean diet focuses more on what a person eats than on exact portion sizes. consisting of fruits, vegetables, nuts, healthy unsaturated fats, like olive or avocado oils, and lean meats, such as fish or poultry. This diet is associated with a decreased risk of CVD and premature death. Pant et al., 2023. In the Finnish Geriatric Intervention Study, to prevent cognitive impairment and disability, FINGER, the Mediterranean diet, with the addition of vitamin D and reduced intake of sugar, salt, and alcohol, yielded increases in cognitive performance. Ngandu et al., 2015. Another study, Mediterranean-Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay, MIND, found benefits to long-term memory, Morris et al., 2015. Eating a well-balanced and nutritious diet promotes cognitive and psychological well-being, in part because of the bidirectional connections between the nerves of the digestive system and the central nervous system, known as the gut-brain axis. Appleton, 2018. The nutrients listed in Table 13.1 have all been associated with a lower risk of poor mood and mood disorders. Dasgupta, 2018. To help people make these healthy choices, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, NHLBI, recommends reading the nutrition facts label on packaged foods and paying close attention to % daily values. Aim to consume more foods that have at least 20% of your daily recommended servings of potassium, fiber, vitamin C and A, calcium, and iron, and eat fewer foods that contain more than 5% of your recommended servings of saturated and trans fats, cholesterol, and sodium. NHLBI 2013. Intersections and contexts. Food deserts. Access to healthy and nutritious foods is difficult for many. Over 13 million people in the U.S. find themselves living in a low-access food area or food desert, where nutritious fresh foods are unaffordable and inaccessible. Johnson & Stewart, 2021. The lack of accessibility can be defined geographically as an urban area a mile or more from stores, or a rural area 10 miles or more from stores. Or it can be defined economically as an area with over 20% poverty. Researchers have also coined the related term food swamp to refer to areas where fast food and junk food are disproportionately available. Rose et al., 2009. Convenience stores that may have a closer proximity to many low-income areas largely sell highly processed foods, making it difficult for those with less access to transportation to acquire fruits, vegetables, and healthy proteins. However, some residents living within areas with limited access to nutritious food are experimenting with ways to bridge this nutritional gap. Situated within a food desert, Syracuse University has started to offer a food pantry to students who need affordable access to nutritious food. Nearby Brady Farm runs a community-supported agriculture (CSA) program using vacant urban land to offer locals weekly access to fresh-grown produce, as well as education on how to cultivate and cook healthy foods. Hurst, 2023. After learning that the county surrounding her campus contained 15 food deserts, University of North Carolina Greensboro professor Marianne LaGreco worked with community members to organize a farmers market to provide fresh food to local citizens. LaGreco notes the importance of being inclusive in such programs, such as accepting federal food benefit forms of payment. County officials also received a grant from the United Way to create a mobile produce market, named the Mobile Oasis, to reach residents in a wider area. In addition to food, the Mobile Oasis offers food education, including preparation tips, recipes, cooking utensils, and reusable shopping bags. Sykes, 2015. Institute for Community and Economic Engagement, 2012. Exercise. Exercise is one of the most useful tools for promoting psychological health and well-being. Singh et al., 2023. What is the best type of exercise? It's difficult to say, because individuals have preferred activities and unique capabilities, plus habits formed in adolescence and early adulthood that continue later in life. The general recommendation is to get 150 minutes of moderately intense physical activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise each week. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 2018. Walking can provide moderate-intensity exercise and can sometimes be accomplished during household chores, like vacuuming, workplace activities, like taking stairs rather than the elevator, or childcare activities, such as moving around to soothe a fussy infant. In fact, walking is the most common form of moderate exercise for U.S. adults, Dasgupta, 2018. Weight-bearing and strength training exercises are also important and are recommended twice a week. These are associated with stronger bone density to protect against osteoporosis and better muscle retention to guard against sarcopenia. Exercise also has mental health benefits. Cardiovascular exercise, such as jogging, dancing, or swimming, also referred to as aerobic exercise or cardio, has been found to improve mood and reduce stress. Sharma et al., 2006. Yoga is also an effective way to manage stress and reduce resting heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormones, such as cortisol. Ross and Thomas, 2010. Wang and Sabo, 2020. It can also improve balance and flexibility. Bomek Bunia and Ray, 2024. Sleep. Sleep is a critical part of health that is often sacrificed in favor of other obligations, such as work and family care. Basner et al., 2007. Sleep helps to consolidate new memories and flush toxins from the brain. Fulse et al., 2019. Cleansing et al., 2019. Inadequate sleep is associated with an increase in accidents and falls. Bloom et al., 2009. Weight gain. Kobayashi et al., 2013. Patel et al., 2006. Slower processing speed and memory. Kukauer et al., 2019. Increased risk of osteopenia and sarcopenia. Lucassen et al., 2017. And decreased immune health. Aldebal and Bahamam, 2011. It is recommended that middle-aged adults get at least 6 hours of high-quality sleep per night. Hershkowitz et al., 2015. Sleep quality is the degree to which a person feels well rested after sleeping, which can be affected by how easily they fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up, as well as the ease of their progression through sleep cycles, especially with respect to REM stage sleep. Barnes et al., 2023. Common middle adulthood demands of work and family may require adults to get up earlier or go to bed later than desired or needed. They may also introduce stress-related restlessness and interruptions, which further reduce the quantity and quality of sleep. Sleep psychologists have identified a behavior termed revenge bedtime procrastination, in which individuals postpone sleep at the end of the day in favor of passive activities like watching television, because their daytime schedule is too hectic to allow for any leisure or relaxation. Suni and Dimitriou, 2023. To protect against these impediments to sleep, the CDC recommends that adults try to adopt and maintain a consistent sleep schedule, create a comfortable sleeping environment free from distractions such as electronic devices, avoid large meals and stimulants before bedtime, and get regular physical exercise. CDC 2024C. Psychological trauma and resilience. While most midlife adults are coping with regular stressors, it may surprise you to learn that 70% report having experienced a traumatic event in their lifetime. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, text revision, DSM-5-TR, defines a traumatic event as exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. American Psychiatric Association, 2022. The type of trauma and likelihood of occurrence vary by identity and environment. Women and girls are more likely to have experienced domestic and sexual violence, childhood abuse, life as a refugee, and the death of a child. Men are more apt to have survived or witnessed physical assault, disasters, and warfare. Benjet et al., 2016, Tolin and Foa, 2006. Worldwide data find that adults who are married and educated are less likely to be exposed to trauma. Benjet et al., 2016, Roberts et al., 2011. Trauma responses vary in symptoms and severity, but they can include difficulty regulating emotions, attentional deficits, guilt, interpersonal difficulties, and even changes to areas of the brain that process emotion and memory, including the amygdala and hippocampus. Kunamatsu et al., 2020, Liaite et al., 2022. Psychological and behavioral symptoms of trauma can affect not only the survivor, but also others in their environment. Consequences of trauma can be both immediate and, if untreated, long-term and intergenerational. Children of trauma survivors may be affected by the unhealthy behaviors or worldview of their caregivers, such as substance abuse or depression, and in some cases, those unhealthy behaviors and perspectives may be learned and repeated by the children themselves. Kuchinska and Widera-Wysyjanska, 2010. Trauma can increase the risk of mental illnesses, including addiction, personality disorders, eating disorders, anxiety disorders, and mood disorders. Despite the high rates of experienced trauma, only 5% of U.S. adults are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. However, many adults do not seek treatment or receive a diagnosis, especially those from marginalized groups. Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies, 2023. Many adults find ways to adapt and overcome traumatic life experiences. A person's resilience is their ability to successfully adapt to difficult life experiences by making mental, emotional, and behavioral adjustments to cope. American Psychological Association, 2018. What factors promote resilience and recovery after trauma? Much like the research on stress management, trauma research suggests that a person's ability to return to healthy functioning relies on developing an adaptive mindset and receiving prompt social support, with each of these variables potentially affecting the other. Lin et al., 2022. Cultural and spiritual values provide a lens through which adults interpret and respond to trauma. Kalmanowitz and Ho, 2017. For many adults, their religious or ethnic identity can provide a framework for sustaining hope, finding a sense of belonging and meaning, and seeking out social support, all of which increase resilience among those reporting high affiliation with each of those identity aspects. Raghavan and Sandana Pichai, 2019. Veronese et al., 2017. Wexler, 2014. You can read more about the connection between well-being, hopefulness, and social support in Chapter 14, Social and Emotional Development in Middle Adulthood, ages 30 to 59. Work-life balance. The average person will spend 90,000 hours working over their lifetime. Gettysburg College, ND. Work typically provides a source of income, as well as a sense of purpose and identity, but employment is only one part of what individuals do. The concept of work-life balance describes the way people manage the demands of work, home life, and other interests, activities, and responsibilities. Lack of work-life balance can create burnout, which is associated with irritability, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and increased risk of cardiovascular and mental illness. Aronofsky, 2017. Successfully allocating limited resources of time, energy, and money is challenging, especially when inequalities related to gender and discrimination further complicate both work and family life. Parents in this stage of life may move out of the workforce and back to accommodate young children's needs, and middle-aged adults may also need to fit the care of aging parents and family members in their schedules. During the pandemic, many employees of all ages had the opportunity, if not the mandate, to work from home for the first time. And amid all this change, for midlife workers, retirement drew nearer. All of these considerations are important in learning about the benefits and challenges of achieving a satisfying work-life balance in middle adulthood. Wage gaps and paid leave policies. A persistent feature of work in the United States is the pay difference between men and women employees. Figure 13.20. Across full and part-time workers, women earn only 82% of what similarly qualified men make, with the pay gap widening for those with higher education. Gould et al., 2016, Kokar, 2023. In past decades, the divide has narrowed slightly, and pay equity is nearest for young adult women as they close gaps in educational attainment, experience, and occupational differences. However, the gender pay gap increases with age, particularly when women reach the point at which many adults are balancing work responsibilities and childcare. Working women with children are more likely to work 2 fewer hours per week than their same-aged counterparts without children. On the other hand, working fathers work 1 additional hour per week compared to men of the same age without children. Koshar, 2023. These gender differences in the allocation of parenthood and working hours are called the motherhood wage penalty and the fatherhood wage premium, Glaber, 2018. However, the pay gap in middle adulthood is not entirely attributable to the effect of balancing work and caregiving responsibilities. Pay disparities tend to inflate over time because raises are often calculated as percentages of starting pay. The gender pay gap for entry-level positions is 18.4%. Hahn and Riley, 2024. Under those conditions, if a man begins working at a $50,000 salary, a similarly educated woman would, on average, be offered $40,800 to begin work at that same time. If 1 year later each are given a 2% raise, the man's raise would be $1,000 and the woman's raise would be $408. 1 year later, their gender pay gap has already increased to 19%. Paid leave work policies allow working adults to take time away to attend to their own health or their family members' health or caregiving needs. This benefit could include medical leave to address a serious health condition, parental leave to care for a new child, caregiving leave to take care of a sick loved one, deployment-related leave to adjust to a family member's military deployment, or safe leave to find safe refuge from sexual or domestic violence. U.S. federal law does not guarantee paid leave under any of these circumstances, so access to paid leave is subject to the policies of the employer, and those with lower income jobs and service sector jobs are less likely to be afforded this benefit. 11 U.S. states and territories have passed paid family and medical leave laws. California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Washington State, and Washington, D.C. These laws ensure cash benefits and sometimes job protection, health insurance, and protection from discrimination or retaliation because of medical, caregiving, or parental leave. However, the definition of family varies and does not necessarily include members of a person's chosen family. Weston Williamson, 2023. Compared to other nations, the United States is alone in its limited access to paid leave. Data gathered on 41 nations by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development found that the United States was the only country that did not federally protect paid parental leave, with most nations guaranteeing 20 weeks or more to parents with a new child. Figure 13.21. Topping the list was Estonia, with 86 weeks of paid parental leave. Livingston and Thomas, 2019. Workplaces and schedules. Work-life balance and an individual's sense of job satisfaction are impacted by many factors, including workplace location, commuting, and job schedules. With home internet access increasing, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, remote work has increasingly become an option in some careers. White-collar and technical jobs are more likely to be able to offer and support work-from-home positions, and U.S. workers with advanced degrees are more likely to work from home full or part-time. Hahn and Main, 2023. Women, older adults, and those with lower education or income are less likely to be afforded work-from-home or flexible schedule options. Dua et al., 2022. Almost 13% of full-time employees work from home, and another 28% follow a hybrid model that combines in-office and work-from-home time. These arrangements have yielded a mix of results and individual preferences. Working from home can reduce the time, stress, and cost of commuting, and workers with jobs that require greater amounts of individual concentration seem to benefit from the opportunity to reduce workplace interruptions by working outside the office. Golden and Gajendran, 2019. Employees also say that working from home allows for greater flexibility in how they spend their time and even flexibility in where they choose to live. Buffer, 2023. But not all workers have this experience. While employee surveys have also found that remote work corresponds with reduced stress for some 42%, there are also drawbacks. Some employees find that working from home is isolating and reduces collaboration and the chance to build relationships with coworkers. Others report that with the lines blurred between home and office, they end up working longer hours. Also, only 1/3 of employees working from home have a dedicated office space at home. The rest work from their bedroom, living room, or even move from room to room throughout the day. Figure 13.22. Despite the drawbacks, however, 98% of those who currently work remotely would prefer to continue to do so at least part of the time for the rest of their career. Allen et al., 2015. Dunn, 2022. Some workplaces have experimented with transitioning from a traditional 5-day workweek to a 4-day week. In 2022, more than 60 companies and almost 3,000 workers in the United Kingdom participated for 6 months in an experiment with the 4-day workweek. Lewis et al., 2023. Findings from the study showed that the shortened schedule resulted in lower rates of employee stress and burnout, and more than half of employees reported improvements in options around work-life balance. Of the participating businesses, 92% plan to continue the 4 days a week model. This model not only can provide more flexibility in the work week, but also cuts down on commuting time. The average commute to work in the United States is nearly 30 minutes each way, with most leaving between 6 and 8:30 a.m., which makes it particularly difficult to get school-aged kids off to school. The longest commutes are for those using public transportation. U.S. Census Bureau, 2021. Adjusting to a 4 days a week model saves 1 hour of time that could be allocated to work, caregiving, or leisure. Reduces rush hour congestion on public transportation and roads, saves fuel costs, and thereby may allow more opportunity to balance responsibilities at work and home. Job satisfaction. Job satisfaction generally increases with age and is predicted by factors such as perceived support at work, level of job engagement, and opportunities for planning and control over work tasks. But satisfaction is not increased by time spent working in a single organization. Indriwati et al., 2022, Safitri et al., 2020. Rather, Across a wide variety of occupations, increased job satisfaction over the lifespan is better accounted for by increases in pay or position that result from moving from one workplace to another, rather than remaining in a single organization. Riza et al. 2016. In fact, job satisfaction is negatively correlated to the amount of time spent working for the same organization. Inflexible job hours, job insecurity, perceived lack of control over daily work, poor relationships with coworkers, discrimination in the workplace, and work stress all predict increased feelings of work dissatisfaction. Stats 2019. Chronic dissatisfaction can lead to burnout, a state in which long-term job-related stress leads to disillusionment and lack of energy. Perhaps for reasons like these, there has been a substantial rise in the number of workers who are self-employed, particularly among women, Black and Hispanic adults, and those with young children. Self-employment can offer greater autonomy in the organization of work and is most common in the fields of transportation, communication, personal services, which can include anything from accounting to healthcare, and recreational services, such as entertainment. Kai and Baker, 2023.6. The careers of many adults reach their peak in midlife, when they often produce high-quality, creative work. However, career adjustments and changes in work arrangements have grown more frequent in recent years. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, more than 20% of adults over age 40 years have changed not just their jobs but their careers. Prudential, 2021. Another 46% considered or are considering a change, even if doing so means taking a reduction in pay. Microsoft, 2021. Some individuals change jobs and careers by choice, seeking more fulfilling employment or attempting to change a situation of stagnation or burnout. Those seeking new work because of dissatisfaction may find the contentment of a new job fleeting after the newness wears off, and then re-engage in the job search cycle. Riza et al. 2016. At other times, job changes are involuntary and result from changes in a company or industry, such as layoffs, mergers, relocations, or even closures. These uncontrollable events tend to be more psychologically taxing on employees. Crawley et al. 2003. The stress of unexpected unemployment can be minimized by support, encouragement, and understanding from significant others. Vinokur and Van Ryn, 1993. Figure 13.23. Individuals in these circumstances also benefit from the use of problem-focused coping skills, oriented toward problem-solving, and emotion-focused coping skills, oriented toward managing stress and other distressing feelings. Cook and Hepner, 1997. Soar et al. 2015. Outside of one's job, engaging in interests and leisure activities is an important element of work-life balance. Adults between the ages of 25 and 60 years report having a daily average of 5 hours of free time, with men reporting approximately 30 more minutes of free time per day than women. More than half of that free time is spent in front of a screen, cell phone, computer, TV. Sturm and Cohen, 2019. Due to caregiving and work responsibilities, midlife adults spend very little time in physical leisure activities, daily average of 20 minutes for men and daily average of 13 minutes for women, though overall available free time in physical leisure activities increase on the weekends. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2023. Sturm and Cohen, 2019. Physical activities performed during leisure time, like hiking, walking, biking, running, and dancing, are associated with increased lifespans. Schnorr et al. 2017. Those adults who engaged in high levels of physical activity saw the greatest lifespan benefit of 5.5 years. Those engaging in moderate levels benefited by 4.5 years. Even light activity can add 2.8 years to the lifespan. Cognitive abilities are also improved by leisure activities. Researchers have found less cognitive decline when leisure time includes games, puzzles, or physical activities. Andel et al. 2016. Improving work-life balance by engaging in personal leisure activities provides adults with several health benefits, including lowered stress levels, Duprel et al. 2019, and reduced likelihood of burnout, Wolf et al. 2021, outcomes that are important to overall well-being.